Hello! Today in Minecraft, I'm building this beautiful, gigantic mountain. I'm going to take you through every stage of planning the mountain, designing it in creative, and then completing it in survival. So not only will we have an incredible start to a new Minecraft base on the Channel 64 SMP, but you'll also have all the keys to unlock your own crazy terraforming project. So let's do this. So it's time to say goodbye to saltwater and have a base to call my own. Goodbye temporary storage, you won't believe how satisfying it is tearing this down. Let's head to the bulk buy boat and the Archicorp shopping district to collect our lovely profits. I love the smell of capitalism in the morning. Then for a final goodbye, head up to my starter base, this incredible airship, and take in some of our projects from this season, including this magnificent courthouse and the ominous league of underwhelming gentlemen. It's been one incredible journey, but the clock is ticking to the end of the season. So let's grab some fireworks and complete the long journey over to the new base location. I recently moved in real life also, and to be honest, it was pretty stressful, but totally worth it. I'm hoping for the same here. Behold, we have a new ugly temporary storage. Don't worry guys, over the next couple of episodes, this is going to be sorted. But we have plenty of materials to get us going on some mammoth projects I have planned. Anyway, if we head over this hill, we come to the new base location, a beautiful expanse of plains that I'm going to turn into an incredible base. But we do have some issues. You see, this land is filled with awkward hills and deep gouges in the land. Plus, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to ask these residents to move out. It's the price of progress, my guy. I'm sorry. Overall, it's not really pretty, and I want a blank canvas to work with, so I made the call out on the Channel 64 Discord, and over the next 5 days, we completely transformed this area. I'm honestly so surprised and impressed we got it done this quickly. Massive thanks to everyone who took part in this project, but special thanks to Martin, who apparently got his digger stuck here. That's a nice piece of kit, Martin. Shame it'll eventually be buried forever. But most of all to Loki, who was here as much as me, if not more than I was. Although his explosive technique was a little terrifying at points, and I had to work hard to save these delightful guys from the blast radius. As you can see, this area is gigantic, and it's going to be a struggle to fill it all in the remaining time for the season, but I'm going to make sure we at least come away with something to be proud of. So we're going to start it all over in this section by planning out the basic structure of the mountain. First, we're going to need a bunch of wool. We'll start off with an outline to give us an idea of the scale we are looking at. Now we're going to use even more wool to create some basic wireframes, making sure to take into account the rate of elevation and any peaks. I want to keep straight lines at a minimum, making sure to stagger blocks horizontally and vertically as we go. And by the time we have 6 wireframes in, we get a really good idea of the shape this mountain is going to take. So now we have a strong idea to work with as we head into creative. So welcome to my creative flat world. I'm gonna have to be careful of spoilers in here, but over in this corner of the map, we have my first ever attempt at a mountain. This was going to be for my single player world, but before I got a chance to build it, I got invited to Channel 64. And overall, I would say this is really cool. There's a lot of variety in elevation and palette, although there is definitely some work that can be done as far as shaping. If I took the time to get some custom trees on here, it would be really awesome. But first of all, I want to create something new and unique for my new base. And secondly, I want to go much bigger than this previous design. The only issue is this whole mountain took me literally months to design, painstakingly placing blocks by hand, and we do not have time for that with the season end coming up. So like a painter using a variety of tools and brushes to create their artwork, I'm going to be using this awesome tool called Axiom. Now the basic features of Axiom alone stone are incredibly useful, and if you ever want an Axiom tutorial, just let me know in the comments. But for today, we're going to be using this page of Axiom, and I know, it's pretty overwhelming at first, but it has incredible features like this elevation tool, which literally allows you to create mountains in seconds. A very cool feature, but using that alone doesn't feel very creative. So we're going to use a variety of features from Axiom to create something unique. First of all, I'm going to select my current block as this bright blue concrete. It just makes it easier to differentiate the work we're doing from the land below. And it's as simple as pressing Ctrl Z to undo any changes we make. Our first tool is going to be the rock tool, where we can use different sizes of brush to get together a basic shape for the mountain. For there, we're going to hit the elevation tool to create a variety of peaks throughout the build. I often find it super handy to use a smaller size brush to get the summit exactly as you want it. On top of that, by selecting 2 points using the slope tool, we can ease out the transition between peaks and the rest of the mountain, while the smooth tool will remove any rough edges and create perfect areas for grassland. After a bit of work flipping between various tools, eventually we get an ideal shape for our mountain, albeit a lot smaller than the actual mountain we're building today. So now it's time to talk about palette. We'll talk about this more during the actual build, but essentially I wanted a mix of blocks to allow for shadows and highlights. To apply them to our mountain shape is super easy using both the painter and noise painter brush. Just click and drag over the area you want to apply it, and instantly you have a grassy verge on the side of your mountain. Whereas the noise painter is more useful when you are using a variety of blocks. It has a variety of options for patterns, so have a play around and see which you prefer. Again, click and drag over the area you want to apply to, and boom, you have an instant textured surface on the side of the mountain. So essentially, after using both these brushes, swapping in and out of your required blocks, you'll eventually have a fully coloured and realised mountain design. However, it's always important to go in by hand afterwards. This is where you can really fine-tune the design and make it your own. With the replace tool, this is even easier than usual. Axiom can be difficult to master, so just have a play around. Take some time to get used to the features and enjoy the process. But be careful, it's easy to get carried away with Axiom, and next thing you know, you have hundreds of thousands of blocks to collect in survival. Oof, this is gonna take a while. Luckily, we have a huge amount of stone saved up from the serious amount of digging we did for the new base, and even more cobbled deep slate and tuff from the stupid amount of time I've spent mining for diamonds. Cobblestone and basalt come easily from this handy farm we made earlier in the season. We can stick the basalt in these furnaces to cook it up into smooth basalt, and after gathering a bunch of moss from the moss farm, combine it with the cobblestone to get the mossy variant. While we're in the industrial district, we'll fire up the wood farm for some acacia logs that we can craft down into acacia wood, and pick up some light grey and grey wool from the wool farm. After a brief trip over to the mesa to mine up a bunch of terracotta that we could turn into cyan terracotta using some dyes from Terek's shop, I'm gonna have to plunder a mangrove swamp for a bunch of mud and deforest a large spruce forest for the lovely leaves. Fortunately, the majority of the rest of the materials can be gathered from my storage. Now for two of the most awkward blocks, snow and coal ore. I have to admit, Snowy Boy number 2 isn't really cutting it for all the snowy blocks I require. So we're gonna have to fly out to some snowy peaks to do some gathering there. And while we're out there, grab a bunch of coal ore from the various stony shores and stone peaks on the edges of the Channel 64 server. Seriously, who builds with 24 shulkers of coal ore? Absolutely ridiculous. And after that monumental gathering montage, we are more than ready to tackle this mountain head on. on. This is gonna be my biggest task yet, so grab a cuppa and let's go. First of all, let's make sure we get this mountain connected to the sea floor. No floating Minecraft builds around these parts. It actually took a ridiculous amount of time to get this done, but finally indulging in some water breathing potions certainly helped. Quite a chunk of the replay got corrupted, but I made sure to cover some of the large holes in the terrain to make a seamless transition to the seabed. Heading to the front left corner of the mountain, the lower sections closer to the water primarily feature darker blocks like mud, cobbled deep slate, basalt and acacia wood, stretching up into sweeping grasslands made up of a mix of grass and moss from sea level to the lower reaches of the mountain, leading into the first peak of this mountain range, too low to be covered with snow, but reaching into a brighter andesite and wool summit. As the mountain rises, the elevation increases, with darker areas below overhangs and in the various crevices featuring shadowy shades like cyan terracotta, mud and grey wool, while another couple of peaks really emphasise the tier increase as we go up the mountain. The central portion of the mountain rises at a much more dramatic rate, leaving less room for grassy plateaus, and the highlights are reserved for the very centre where it juts out from the rest of the build. The front right follows a similar pattern to the previous corner, with the grasslands breaking into tough and mossy cobblestone to provide a nice transition into the stonier textures. Despite having a similar vibe, it's important as the mountain rises to provide variety to make sure the terraforming looks as natural as possible, including a range of peak heights and diameters leading into the first frosted summits of the build. Weaving around the back of this mammoth Minecraft build, the mountain continues to stretch skyward, taking on a much steeper incline as it rises from the deep blue waters below. I think it's really important with a build of this scale to break it down into sections. You don't want to burn yourself out taking on a project like this. We've still got a long way to go, and I have to admit I've been pretty tense because this build is not lit up at all. Now you may say, what about glow lichen? Well, I attempted that on my previous mountain design, and unfortunately I really don't like the unnatural lighting effect you get at night. And even worse, it looks kind of horrid on maps, so I'm going to try and avoid that as much as possible. But by this point in the build, I was getting pretty exhausted. I've already done many days of long hours and hard work for this build, and I don't know if you could tell from this time lapse, but I was falling asleep between placing blocks. So let's grab a healthy sleep and get back to building, because next up we're tackling one of the largest portions of the build, forming into a huge snowy plateau which elegantly leads up into some of the highest peaks of the mountain. Despite a small distraction from a curious wandering snow, we keep plowing on with this build, raising the back with tens of thousands of blocks, with splashes of diorite, calcite and snow, providing a frosty canopy over parts of the build. Now it's a simple matter of plugging the gaps between the back and the front of this mountain, before capping off this Minecraft mega build with 3 huge peaks. It's kind of crazy how many shulkers we've emptied so far, and don't mind me, but I have to say this looks phenomenal. If you have been enjoying the build, make sure to subscribe so you can keep updated on future content, but we're not done yet, as these grassy plains are looking remarkably bare and we have to connect the mountain to ground level with a beautiful forest. But to make sure we don't extend the build too far, a space has to be reserved for our next project, a gigantic mega base. A bit of foreshadowing for the next episode, which will map out with yet more purple wool. With that gigantic plan in place, we can lay down a forest floor at the bottom of the mountain, which will soon be covered with a lush mix of spruce, oak and birch trees. This will extend the entire width of the mountain and will be a rare area to feature substantial use of glow lichen to protect the future builds. To add some extra detail to the forest floor, I'm carving out some boulders, bone mealing the grass, laying down some mossy fallen logs and planting nether mushrooms throughout the moss. The spruce trees, boulders and bone meal grass spread up the sides of the mountain to really upgrade the grassy slopes, even extending to the snowy plateau at the highest reaches of the mountain, before trailing down the right side of the build to top off over 300 custom trees throughout this build. Oof. My mouse clicking finger is gonna be so angry with me. Now just a few tweaks and we'll really cap off this build in style. By adding some snow trails to the chilly plateaus of this build, we can help make the snow look less planned and more natural, while using a ton of snow layers on the main snowy plateau to make that area look truly finished. There's something very satisfying about dive bombing from the top of the mountain to see this massive pile of empty shulkers, and then looking back and being dwarfed by this gigantic Minecraft build. This build has been a true labour of love, and despite it taking a ton of work, I think we've been rewarded with a truly magical start to this new base area. This sure has been a mega dose of terraforming, but if you want some inspiration for your own Minecraft builds, then click on this video where I take you through 20 unique Minecraft build ideas that you can adapt for your own Minecraft world. Thanks so much for watching, take care.